Thank you for downloading the BBC Radio 4 Friday Night Comedy Podcast. I'm Miles Jupp. This week it's the news quiz, and this week's show is so juicy it practically counts as 2 of your 5 a day. The position of the week this week is fetal, so curl up, relax, and enjoy this week's episode of the news quiz.
We present the news quiz with your host, Miles Jupp.
And welcome to a snap new series of the news quiz. We start with a cutting from the Southern Daily Echo, read by Alan Smith.
Police are appealing for information after a naked man was seen near a busy Hampshire road. The man's been described as white, 6 feet tall, with prominent cheeks.
Thanks to Matthew Feldwick, Laura Maunder and lots of other people for sending that in. Now let's meet the teams. Will we welcome first, on my right, Andy Hamilton and Susan Calman. And opposite them, on my left, Helen Lewis and Jeremy Hardy. Andy, who's made a snap decision?
Well, I couldn't believe this. I was frankly shocked that in a week when the royal princes were campaigning to improve this nation's mental health, Theresa May called an election. How counterproductive is that? I mean, have we not suffered enough? I mean, emotionally, the nation is not ready for this. You know, and why? Why? She went hill walking. Apparently, yeah, she went on a hill walking holiday. She clearly had a horrible time and decided to take it out on us. So anyway, in terms of the politics of it, she clearly feels the need to annihilate the Labour Party. I mean, she doesn't need to annihilate the Labour Party. They're doing that themselves. So that's not really politics, that's workplace bullying, in my view. And she came out with all sorts of absurd self-justifications. My favourite absurd statement that she made was, "I trust the British people." Why? How have we possibly earned that kind of trust? Name one choice that we have made in the last 50 years that turned out well. I reckon you'd have to go back to Lulu and the Eurovision Song Contest. But anyway, I mean, so we're doomed, basically. We got 7 weeks of pointlessly extended news bulletins, of reporters interviewing ordinary people who somehow become important because they live in Peterborough. You know, politicians being chased around by people dressed as giant chickens, pointless TV debates with pointless discussions about who won the pointless debate. And the best I can do, ladies and gentlemen, the only tiny speck of hope that I can offer you is that nuclear war may break out and stop this nonsense.
People have accused her. People say, oh, this is just about the narrow self-interest of the Conservative Party, but I don't think that's fair. I think it's about the narrow self-interest of Theresa May. Because she actually said in her speech, she said "I" an awful lot. And at one point she said, "Make me stronger." Because people say, oh, well, she's a very measured and balanced person. On the one side, she's a ruthlessly cynical opportunist, and on the other side, she's got this insane vaulting ambition. So there's a real balance. It's for Tories, it's a bit like, it's the come down from Boris that they like Theresa, you see, because it's like when you're a kid and your mum gets called away to look after your gran or something and you're left with your dad for 2 days. And initially it's brilliant, you know, it's like Boris. Your dad's brilliant because he lets you eat icing sugar with a tablespoon and watch Confessions of a Window Cleaner. But by Sunday, you're getting really scared and you want your mum to come back.
Helen, were you surprised by the decision?
Yeah, everybody was surprised, because she'd said, I think, 11 times that an early election would cause instability, and then her pitch for why we needed an early election was, it will bring stability. And he kind of went, OK. My favourite thing is the way that this has already become a big argument about the TV debates, right? So will she go on the TV debates? There's this bizarre tweet that came out last night from Sky News saying she's not going to do debates, but she's considering a range of TV formats she might be interested in. And you thought, oh, well, yeah, get you. And I just sort of think...
Perhaps a quiz show she could host. Something
She
like
could
that.
host a quiz show. I reckon Tim Farron would be a demon at those big bouncy balls they have in Total Wipeout. That'd be quite good. I thought about Mastermind, and then I thought, well, the trouble is that Paul Nuttall will think the answer to every question is him, right? Be like, who painted the Sistine Chapel? Me. But yeah, I just think it's going to be a very, very boring campaign. I think that's the big problem. We all have to kind of dial down our expectations of how interesting this is going to be.
Yeah.
But couldn't it be exciting because there is a short time? It could be like 7 weeks of pure panic.
I love it. I love an election, me. There should be more elections. I think there should be more. I think they should lower the voting age to 5. Have elections every day apart from public holidays. I think we should just have more elections. It's amazing. And, you know, my view about the TV debates is the last time there was TV debates, it didn't alter my view. I watched it in the same way as I watched Channel 4's The Jump. You're just waiting for someone to die. And people watch it because they know something horrific's going to happen. Rather than thinking, oh, what's their policy? You're thinking, oh, you know, are they going to do really badly? And that's really not a positive thing, is it, for politics?
Literally the only thing I was looking forward to about election night was watching Nigel Farage lose for the 8th time.
Yeah. Is he ruled himself
He's not
out?
going to stand. Carswell's not going to stand. Who
He's
else won't be standing?
Oh, Alan Johnson. What about Ken Clarke? Is he...
He's staying.
He's staying. Oh,
Farage
good.
is going off to be Trump's diversity advisor, isn't he?
Ken Clarke's definitely staying since the European Butter Mountain, as I like to think of him. He is... he's bang up for it. Yep.
Good.
Do you think is the hill walking that it made? I mean, that's where she made the decision. If you're hill walking, you're basically she was hill walking in Wales. So
Yeah.
It's either hot or raining, so she's either going to be basically she'll have been soaked or she'll have been dangerously dehydrated. So she will have made a decision either depressed or in the grip of hallucinations. Essentially,
The countryside can go wrong very quickly, because if one of the little National Trust arrows gets overgrown with heather, you're in deliverance in no time whatsoever.
Does Mr. May ever speak? He looks very like a geriatric postman Pat. But he never seems to speak. I mean, I presume he must. A marriage would struggle over that long a period if he didn't speak.
Oh, I think that's the perfect way to have a marriage.
Maybe he's got a really stupid voice or something, and he's not allowed to.
Like David Beckham.
Well, if they went and said, yeah. So what's it like being married to the Prime Minister? Well, basically... I think she's great. I really like her. She wears a lot of makeup, but, you know, some birds look classy with a lot of makeup on, don't they?
homeostatically, this is the news that Theresa May has called a snap general election for Thursday, June the 8th. Yes, ding-a-ling, it's seconds out for 8 weeks of mindlessly bashing away at the excrement-packed pinata that constitutes British democracy. Welcome back to the news quiz. What bliss it is to be alive, and by bliss I do, of course, mean utter sweating ball ache. May decided to call the election after a week hill-walking in Snowdonia with her husband Philip, clearly a man who will come up with anything to get his wife off the subject of bridle paths and the protective properties of Gore-Tex. There's been much speculation as to the reason for the election, but my money is, as ever, on pressure from lobbyists for the shadowy pencil-on-string industry. Jeremy Corbyn has said that he welcomes the early election, much as the injured dog welcomes the approach of the vet's needle and the imminent release of death. We will get another one from the shelter. Theresa May says she refuses to participate in TV debates, and Lib Dems have urged broadcasters to empty chair the Prime Minister, just one of the many sex acts that Tim Farron has gone out of his way to confirm that he doesn't think is sinful. 2 points to Andy. Susan, who's giving their 2 pence worth about North Korea?
This is, of course, the impending global thermonuclear war. It's strange. The Trump presidency, to me, is kind of like having a hot tub installed in your garden. You know, when it's first put in, you think, oh, that's going to be a lot of fun. And then after a few weeks, you realise it's just swilling with faeces.
Have you read the instructions properly?
The thing is, what's happened? We, Donald, sent some tweets about North Korea, and then North Korea got upset. I'm summarising. And then North Korea sent a missile which went into the sea. And then Donald Trump said, we're sending our very powerful armada to North Korea, but accidentally they were going to Australia instead, which isn't really very helpful. And then Pence went to the Korean Peninsula and said, don't test Trump. And I think he meant that quite literally. Please don't test him on anything he can. But he might do something with his tweets, which means North Korea launches a nuclear missile, and we'll all have to hunker together for warmth and eventually eat each other.
I think the other thing that struck me was very funny was how quickly the military have managed to capture Donald Trump, because, you know, he was supposedly this non-interventionist who wasn't going to get involved in any overseas military adventures. But all they had to do was just show him the toy box, wasn't it? All they had to do was say, oh, Mr. President, we've got this fantastically huge bomb that no one else has ever played with. And that was it. He's won over.
The good thing about Trump is that if America is attacked, they'll say, Mr. President, get into the bunker, and he'll run into the sandpit on a golf course and die.
The thing I find most astonishing about it is that you can essentially lose an aircraft carrier, which is about the biggest thing that a human can move, right? These things are enormous. And the way that the story that it came out about where it was that a specialist defence publication saw a photo the Navy had tweeted of it and went, that doesn't look like Korea in the background. And that's how they found out it was in Australia. It presumably had, like, someone with a sort of, hat with corks round or something. And they went, hang on a minute, I rumbled this.
Why didn't Kim Jong-un's missile work? Had he strapped a load of dissidents to it or something? It wasn't a very good show of strength. If you're going to test a missile...
It is no huge surprise that the North Korean missiles, touch wood, are not the most effective in the world. I mean, one of them could end up hitting Japan, but it would probably have been aimed at South Korea. So,
and there'd be no guarantee it would explode. I dare say it would just land heavily. Divot warfare.
Bit of a bang. Yeah. That's just chucking stuff.
Now that's not odd, is it?
He did that big parade, and people said, "Well, obviously those missiles were dummies." And I thought, I'd always assumed that whenever there was a big sort of dictatorship military parade, that the missiles were dummies. I never imagined that they actually had real nuclear weapons in the middle of their high street, at risk of some texting van driver backing into a warhead in their capital city.
So if they weren't dummies, that is when you would attack, isn't it? The one moment where you know they can't counter-attack, they're parading all their missiles.
Capaciously, this is the news that Vice President Mike Pence has visited Southeast Asia following increased tensions between the US and North Korea. Pence told Japanese sailors at the US Yokosuka Naval Base that the United States will always seek peace. In case you're wondering where the US Yokosuka Naval Base is, it's about 430 miles east of Hiroshima and 600 miles east of Nagasaki. It wasn't all peace. Pence also announced that when it comes to North Korea, the sword stands ready. I cannot tell you how many times my wife has heard that one of a winter evening. Mr. Pence also stated the era of strategic patience is over, which is incidentally how I tearfully ended mine and Mrs. Jupp's most recent quarterly date night, before hopefully muttering, nevertheless, the sword stands ready. Mr. Pence also delivered a speech in South Korea, provocatively standing on the line of the demilitarised zone that divides the Korean peninsula. Tensions further escalated when Mr. Pence pretended to push a young aide over the line before pulling him back and shouting, "Tell your mum I saved your life." 2 points to Susan. Jeremy, qui sera la présidente?
There's going to be a first round in the French presidential election on Sunday, and currently in the lead is Macron, who is supposedly a centrist in that he's sort of economically and socially liberal. And then there's Fillon, who's been forgiven for his pretending that his family were actually his employees, despite one of them being a baby. He said would be his defence secretary. He's been forgiven because that scandal... The thing about the French is they're fantastically forgiving. It can be corruption, it can be sexual depravity. If you make a souffle that fails to rise, you're out on your ear. But anything else, they're very forgiving. And then Mélenchon, who's the left candidate, is doing surprisingly well. But the main fear is that they will elect Le Pen, we will have to land in Normandy again and sort it out for them. Because they have got previous. They have got previous Johnny Croissant when it comes to slightly vichy-minded people.
Helen, have you been following the French election?
I have, and it's a fascinating election because I think Jeremy's got an interesting point, which is about Fillon and that scandal. The one thing that is a cast-iron asset in politics right now is just brazening it out and not saying sorry. I mean, I just do not see why any politician ever again would say that they were sorry about anything, because you just go, yeah, and then carry on. Fine.
Well, he said an amazing thing, François Fillon. He said at a rally in Paris, he said, I'm not asking you to love me, I'm just asking you to support me because it's in France's interests, which is a sort of anti-Richard Curtis speech.
I'm just an embezzler standing in the rain.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like a defining moment for Europe now. If Le Pen were to win, I mean, luckily they do have this system whereby they vote for a laugh in the first round, and then they go, oh my God, what have I done? And then
What they did brilliantly in France, though, for the election was their presidential debates lasted 4 or 5 hours. Now, that's what we need here. None of this half-hour Jeremy Paxman grilling you for a wee bit. A full-on 4 to 5 hours. Don't let them leave the stage to go to the toilet. Make them piss in a bucket. Let's see what they're made of. Let all of them, every single one of them, all 97 of them, standing on stage, no podium, nothing to lean against. See who goes first. That's the way I want to see the debate.
Big bladder endurance competition.
Absolutely.
Because Putin's backing Fillon and Le Pen. He's backing two competing candidates.
Although, don't you think he probably regrets backing Donald Trump? Sort of, that guy's... I thought he was kind of entertainingly crazy, but he's just crazy.
Do you think the Russians are really that bothered about interfering with all of these things? People have started saying, I hope Russia interferes in our election. People are saying, I hope the Russians come in and sort out our election. That's really not a positive thing, is it? We were hoping that Vladimir Putin hacks the computers and fixes that's not a positive development, is it?
Well, there are other things that we could hope that they could do instead that would
What's
be
that?
for good. Well, just, I don't know, housework, things like that. They clearly, as a nation, they seem incredibly sort of restless and anxious to get on with stuff, and rather than sort of continually sort of duking for data and stuff, we could give... You're having a house done up at the moment. You could have the Russian army coming and doing your bathroom, Susan. Insouciantly, this is the first round of the French presidential election, with not just the future of France, but potentially the fate of the EU, in what the French presumably call le balance. This Sunday, the French will go to the polls and vote in the traditional manner, by entering the booth and stubbing out a Gaulois next to the candidate of their choice, before placing the paper in a box inscribed with the words, "Nothingness like a worm lies coiled at the heart of being." The presidential result will be announced in May, and I think I speak for all of us when I say, will my tickets for Les Miserables still be valid? I have seats in the dress circle. Anyway, we're all on tenterhooks, looking forward to election night, when France's equivalent of Jeremy Vine, Jérémois Chablis, will stand in front of a giant CGI camembert, around which floating microbes with the faces of the candidates will attempt to ferment their way to victory. 2 points to Jeremy. And at the end of round one, the scores are Andy and Susan have 4, and so too to Helen and Jeremy. We start round 2 with a Channel 4 TV listing, as seen in the Radio Times.
10 p.m, The Super Orgasm, a documentary exploring the science of multiple orgasms. 11:05 p.m, 24 Hours in A&E.
Thanks to Bryn Strudwick in Basingstoke, and indeed hordes of other filthy people for sending that in. Andy, why is 123 not as easy as ABC?
Well, somebody decided that we needed to radically reform our exam system because, well, it was a Tuesday. And it had been at least a week since anybody tinkered with anything at the Department of Education. So the radical reform that they went for is that they'd overhaul the exam grading system, and that they would take the revolutionary step of replacing the letters with numbers. Because as we all know, every day I meet somebody who's saying, what the hell is a grade A? I can't get my head round what that signifies. So they decided that they would replace the grades that are letters with 9 numbers. And obviously, the obvious thing to do is to make, grade 1 the best grade. That's the obvious thing to do if you're a normal person. But no, they decided to go the other way. They decided that the highest grade will be 9 because, that makes sense, as in, oh, he's the best in his field, he's the absolute number 9. You hear that? You hear that all the time. It's not been welcomed very widely. It's causing a lot of confusion among pupils and parents and teachers and employers. And I think probably the best course of action now would be for the Department of Education to get checked for obsessive-compulsive disorder.
They've made it so that 9 is the top grade, right? It's so that they can keep adding grades onto the top. At some point, literally like Spinal Tap, they are just going to turn it up to 11 rather than making 10 louder. There's something about schools that makes politicians go mad. So Theresa May's rationale for bringing in grammar schools, selective education, she wants every child to have a good education, which is the maddest thing that anyone said about education since Michael Gove sat in front of a select committee and said he wanted every school to be above average.
Above average.
My geography teacher threw a duster at my head. I learned how to duck. That was what I learned. Because in those days you could do that, couldn't you?
Was she called Miss Bailey?
No, it was a gentleman. It was
Doesn't sound like a gentleman.
It was a tall...
They say, though, that exams, they get much more straightforward. The results are getting better. The exams must be getting easier. And yet, that's sort of double standards, isn't it? Usain Bolt has broken the 100 metres world record twice. I would suspect, therefore, the 100 metres is probably getting easier. Crispily, this is the news that a change in GCSE grades from an alphabetical to numerical system is claimed to be confusing both teachers and pupils. Although, on the upside, finally, it's legitimate for a teacher to say at Parents' Evening, your daughter is a solid 6. A 7 if she puts in a bit of effort. The grades will be scored from 9 to 1, as if in a thrilling countdown towards the pupil's inevitable unemployment. The authorities don't know what they're letting themselves in for. Clearly, the first reaction of any self-respecting teenager will be to aim for a set of results which, when turned upside down, spell out boobs. 2 points to Andy. Helen, have a listen to this. Well, Helen, that's clearly moved you, but can you tell me which seaside town is more than slightly foxed?
I was really surprised by... I mean, I now have a kind of Pavlovian response to anything featuring the word fox, because I think it's Liam Fox. But there are luckily not 300 Liam Foxes per square kilometre in Bournemouth. That would be alarming. But there are animal foxes. So over the last couple of years, what turns out is that rural foxes have declined in numbers. I felt really sad when I read this, because I kind of thought, the noble fox. Shouldn't it be out there kind of in the countryside running through the fields? And then I thought, I moved from the country to the city to have better access to takeaway. Who am I to judge when foxes have done the same?
Isn't it Bournemouth is now the sort of fox capital of England? They're all... I presume these are retired foxes.
They're very bright foxes. I was writing at home one day, and we got loads. I'd see a fox most days, and I could hear there was a dog who lived in one of the gardens behind us, and he went, row, 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 and this went on for like half an hour, row, 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 and I thought, let's just find out. So I looked out the window to see what was wrong with this dog, and it had made the mistake of chasing a fox under a fence. And it had got wedged underneath the fence, and it was Vixen was sitting on top of the fence, peeing on him. And that's how clever foxes are. They've mastered the art of sarcasm.
You know those, all their sex noises they do at night?
Yeah.
I think some of them are faking it. Sometimes you think that is pure Meg Ryan, that is. That's why they've had to move into the cities, because the badgers were all going, oh, well, you lot, get a room. Yeah. So they've all had to leave.
I mean, our foxes really congregate. You see loads on bin night. and then they strew the rubbish like all the way down the street, which is basically what the bin men do.
Do you not have a wheelie bin?
Yeah, but some people aren't as disciplined enough in terms of... The foxes are quite canny, you know, so if anything's left unattended, so they probably could do the bin men's job.
I weigh the bins down. I make my wife lie on top of them all night.
You know what, Andy? When you start becoming belligerent about what your neighbours do with their bins, it's the same as when you suddenly take an interest in golf. It's time to go to Switzerland.
Humongously, this is the news that Bournemouth has been named the urban fox capital of the UK, with 23 foxes per square kilometre. All I can say is if you like having loud sex in public and defecating on people's doorsteps, you'll always have an alibi in Bournemouth. Bournemouth is the final resting place of both J.R.R. Tolkien and Mary Shelley, both of whom were mauled to death by foxes. Anyway, this is unsurprising to me, as I've been firing foxes from a cannon into the Bournemouth area for what now seems like decades. 2 points to Helen. Before we reveal the final scores, has anybody got a cutting they'd like to share? Andy.
This is from Tom Dodds from Hexham, and he saw this in the Hexham Courant. And it says, due to demand, clay pigeon shooting sessions at a Tynedale club are to be aimed at women only.
Susan.
Mike Brown saw this in the North Church Parish newsletter in an advert trying to find a home for the Rescue Kennels Dog of the Month. Jodie is a terrier cross born in 2006. She may be mature, but she has a spring in her step and a lot of love to give. She enjoys her walks and would be ideal for an active retired person or couple. She could probably live with another dog pending introductions. Jodie cannot live in Luton.
Helen.
Jim Leader heard a BBC One continuity announcer say this. Just when Mick thought that things couldn't get any worse, EastEnders follows the One Show.
Thank you. And now let's take a look at the final score. Andy and Susan have 8, but this week's winners are Helen and Jeremy with 10. Before we leave you, here is an announcement on BBC Six Music, heard by Paul Endine in Brackley.
To those of you texting in regarding the news item about the Vera Lynn tribute flypast, this event has been hampered by poor weather, not by Paul Weller.
And with that, goodbye.
Taking part in the news quiz were Andy Hamilton, Susan Calman, Helen Lewis and Jeremy Hardy. In the chair was Miles Jupp and the news was read by me, Alan Smith. The chair's script was written by Sarah Campbell and John Hunter and James Kettle, with additional material by Clint Edwards and Robin Morgan. The producer was Richard Morris and it was a BBC Studios production.
If you enjoyed this week's podcast, why not show off your downloading skills with the Comedy of the Week? To find out more, please go to the website bbc.co.uk/Radio4.